Good morning, everyone. Glad to see you all here. We're going to have an interactive kind of social justice forum. You're going to learn some things, and then we're going to hopefully dream together. So my name is Gretchen Musicant, and this is a social justice forum Sunday morning. I'm a member of the Westminster social justice team. This year, our focus for our program year is acting based on our values, avoiding despair. Within that theme, we seek to understand our continuing responsibility to help build a loving, sustainable, and just community. Today, we had hoped to be joined by Elder Catherine Aylin Halverson, but she has been called away for family need. So I will be joined only by Brian Kemp, who is my co-chair. Yes, good morning. And he and I have been co-leading an effort that the session began to develop a policy on an anti-racism policy, which has now been adopted, and you'll hear more about that. And so we're here today to really talk to you about, so what's next? What shall we make of this place we are together? We developed the policy through the spring and summer of this year, starting when Jeff Jeppinga, I never did say his name correctly, was our leader, and we involved several members of session in this work. Our goal for the policy is that it's not just words on paper, but a blueprint for moving our work together. We'll be asking your help today and beyond to help us imagine how to best accomplish these goals. You will notice that there's a piece of paper on the table and pens, and we will be giving you some guidance for using those. Also wanted to note that Kathleen Campbell, another member of our group, is online, and so she will be moderating with those who are participating from that vantage point. So before we get into our conversation, I just want to remind people in the room that those attending in person will bring a microphone to you when you are going to share information with the rest of the group. We're going to have some table conversations, and of course you won't have to have your microphone in front of you for your table conversations, but as we share out from those, we would like you to wait until a microphone comes to your table. And for those attending on live stream, please submit your comments or your questions or your thoughts in the live stream chat. And we're going to be monitoring that and raise those comments and ideas and questions into the room here as we go. As part of our ongoing effort to promote respectful conversations around concerns in our community, we have established guidelines that we will show you on the screen. The next one too. I'm going to focus on them a little bit more than we do usually, because we are going to have conversations at our table that I want to make sure that we are thinking of these commitments. So we want to make sure that there's equity in all voices, that we hear each other. We encourage curiosity, and so we ask with, we lead with our questions. That when we ask questions, we make sure they are questions and not statements, that we listen generously, and so really try and understand what people are saying, and that in all that, we honor the image of God. So before we get started, just a short prayer to ground ourselves. So please join me in prayer. O Holy One, God of justice, breathe into us today a spirit of curiosity and humility. Help us engage with mindfulness, following the lead of voices from our community. Guide our speech and our self-awareness so that we may honor the divine in all people. Amen. So now we're going to turn, so I moved from being moderator to panelist. And Brian is going to share with us some background, and then we'll stop periodically and we'll turn to you. Is that the very first thing? Okay, so we're going to turn to you right away. Um, any of you that were here last Sunday participated in a writing exercise because we had a speaker who was talking, two speakers that were talking to us about that work that's going on in the jails. But it is a practice that we have found is really helpful for engaging our thinking. And so this is where the pieces of paper come into play. So each person, please get a piece of paper, and there's pens in the middle if you need those. I'm going to tell you what the assignment is, but then before we start, I want us to ground ourselves. So I'm going to have a little table moving, and yes, we have people at each table who are scribes, but for this exercise, we're not going to record your ideas. This is more of a generative exercise just to get you thinking about actually how we get ready for change. So the question that we're going to reflect on, and we'll just have a couple minutes, is how you have prepared for a time when you expected a change or a shift in your life. Now, before we do that, though, I would like everybody to sit comfortably in their chair. Put your feet, ground them onto the floor. Close your eyes for a minute. Take a deep breath in and a long exhalation. Take another deep breath and a long exhalation. All right, open your eyes and begin writing for the next 2 minutes. And this might seem a little strange to you, but the exercise of telling yourself that you should be writing for a full 2 minutes actually brings things out of your mind. So the question, and here it is, right on the screen. Reflect by writing about how you prepared for a time when you expected a change or a shift in your life. All right. Think about wrapping up that last thought. And then we're going to have just a few minutes to share, if you want to, anything that came to mind in answer to that question. We're not going to report out on these. It's just sharing at your table for 5 minutes or so. And then we're going to begin to learn a little bit more about the policy development and the policy. So talk amongst yourselves.
So folks, we'll give you about another minute and ask you to wrap up your conversations, and then we'll continue on. All right. So I bring everybody back to the front. Bring everybody back to the front. There we go. Hey, everybody. There we go. Just finishing up the last couple of conversations. And so one of the things we wanted to talk about was, so we're talking to you about an anti-racism. Why are we talking to you about an anti-racism policy right now? Maybe it seemed like this is something that would have been more topical a couple of years ago. Others of you might be thinking this is probably a very topical time to be talking about anti-racism. But this is a topic, certainly at Westminster, that as you look over time, there's been a number of things that we've done that have been on this topic. A few things that I would point to: we had the Hope for the World. Part of the Hope for the World is that we challenge inequalities and practices, confronting hatred and bigotry. That was something we adopted a few years ago. We've also made the decision to be a Matthew 25 church. One of the key parts of that is to dismantle structural racism. Part of the ministry and mission study that was prepared prior to our new head pastor coming, there was an aspiration that was named within that to attract a more diverse congregation, and that we acknowledge the opportunity to take more direct action. So this has been something that's certainly been building. The PCUSA in 2020 did adopt a recommendation that congregations and presbyteries adopt anti-racism policies, as well as adopting their own. So that basically the anti-racism policies are not optional for Christians. It's an essential part of discipleship. So we see this as just something that directionally we've been moving toward. We've been maybe a little remiss in not adopting it up to now, but certainly the timing is right. If you look at the timeline, kind of where this falls within all that, the social justice advocacy statement goes back all the way to 2003. Hope for the World is 2011. There was a racial justice work group survey in 2018. The MMS was in 2023. I mentioned the PCUSA resolution was 2020. And then in 2024, we started the Anti-Racism Policy Task Force as part of the transition work under Jeff while he was here. We completed that and adopted it earlier this year. And so what do we, kind of where we are now, before we get to that, there's been ongoing work on this topic within forums like this one, within adult education, with partnerships with other churches. There's been trips that groups have gone on that have been on the topic. So certainly this is something Westminster has been very interested in. So now we got to the point where we've developed and adopted the policy. And right now we're in a transition phase where we're really exploring. So, okay, we've got a policy. We don't want it to be, as we said earlier, a policy that just sits on the shelf. So we want to explore, and we're starting this with you, as to what does that mean? How do we move that more into actions? So I'm going to talk just in generalities about the policy. We didn't want people sitting here studying the policy. We don't want to focus on the policy itself right now. We are working on, or will be working on, a rollout strategy, communication strategy with that. Sort of working with Megan, with Jessica, Krista, our communications person, so that's forthcoming. But at least give you a little bit of grounding in terms of what the policy is. So we have an introduction and purpose section where we recognize that the progress from the last several decades is under threat. And, that was something that was on one of the previous slides, and that we need to be proactive. In doing this, we want to follow the teachings of Christ, to love our neighbors, support those among us who are prevented from living the fullness of life. We want to act both within the walls of Westminster as well as beyond our walls. And we want to regularly review the policy and just make sure that it's the actions that we're taking under the policy are relevant, and also as the world changes around us, that we're making sure that we change with that. So the next section is a statement commitment. This language is taken directly from the Westminster website, the social and economic justice section of the website. We looked at basically talking about our commitment to anti-racism. We looked at some other potential language around that and decided that this really said it extremely well. So we adopted that language pretty much verbatim. And then there's a section that maybe is not as familiar to people, but the confession and lament section. And in this section, the policy recognizes that racism is a sin, and that sin exists even when well-intentioned people maybe aren't actively committing it, but it is something that's kind of embedded within our society. And we also acknowledge that in regret, the impact of racism on people of color, both historically as well as in current times. And then the last section is a brief call to action. We recognize that this is something that's not an easy topic. If it was easy, it would have been solved long ago. And it's also not something that we're going to solve by top-down mandates. This is something that we really need to involve all areas of the church. And we recognize that Westminster, and we've acknowledged that here today, that Westminster has taken steps along this way, but we want to deepen and broaden those efforts. And so we adopted this at the October session. This is the motion that was approved by the session. But we adopted it with the understanding that, okay, but now we have a policy. We need to kind of thoughtfully and prayerfully consider what's the best way forward. We want to, start by, talking to the people in this room, leverage your knowledge, your resources, as well as leverage resources within and outside of the congregation. And we're inviting you to come along with us and help us envision what that would look like. With that, we'll get into our discussion questions.
All right. Thank you, Brian, for covering a lot of hard work in a few minutes. So what we're going to ask you to do is think about this question. We have a scribe at just about every table, and for those tables where there isn't a designated scribe, Brian and I will show up briefly at your table. What we'd like you to do is, when I stop talking, think about this question for a minute or two, and then begin to share at your table with the expectation that after about 10 minutes, we'd be able to summarize what occurred at your table, and maybe, if we have time, share one or two items, but we will collect the accumulated wisdom from you at the table. I wanted to start, before we go into our work, a part of a prayer by Martin Luther King, which I think hopefully sets us in a place of readiness for this work. So join me in this prayer. God of truth, in your wisdom, enlighten us. God of love, in your mercy, forgive us. God of hope, in your kindness, heal us. Creator of all people, in your generosity, guide us. Racism breaks your heart. Break our hearts for what breaks yours, O Lord. Amen. So please think a minute or two about imagining our congregation in 10 years and how we will be a clearer reflection of God's image because of the anti-racism work that we will do between now and then. So think out 10 years. It gives us a little space. Think to yourself for a minute or two and then begin to share. Well, thank you all for participating in what sounds like a very rich conversation. We're going to draw closure to this question. If you can finish your thoughts, finish sharing them with others at your table. And given that we have another rich question coming up, what I think I'll do in terms of reporting out is to see if we have time at the very end to hear the contextual answers or things you'd like to share from both questions and not to spend time hearing from the first right away. But as I noted, we have scribes, and so we're recording all of your ideas. So the next question, we're going to be doing the same, thinking amongst ourselves and then sharing it at our table. And the question is, consider one area of church life that is important to you. Maybe it's a part of church life that you regularly participate in. Maybe you have some leadership role there. How could that area of the church life be renewed or invigorated by the work of anti-racism? And I'm going to ground us again with another prayer that I meant to look up who this person was who prayed this good prayer, but I don't know. And I didn't have time this morning. I'm sorry. His name is John Bucky. Okay. So let us pause and pray. Lord Jesus Christ, who reached across the ethnic boundaries between Samaritans and Romans and Jews, who offered fresh sight to the blind and freedom to captives. Help us to break down the barriers in our community, enable us to see the reality of racism and bigotry, and free us to challenge and uproot it from ourselves, our society, and our world. Amen. So again, the question is, consider one area of the church life that is important to you, not saying that other areas aren't, but maybe zero in on one, and then how could that area of the church life be renewed or invigorated by the work of anti-racism? And again, we'll have until about 5 after, then we'll see if we have time to gather some thoughts that were raised and then summarize and end our session this morning. So thank you all for your conversation. All right. Sadly, we have a time limit on this wonderful conversation. So if you could finish your thoughts at your table. And I think we have time maybe just to hear one or two ideas, not even from each table, just sadly because of the time we're given. But does anyone have something that they'd really like to share from their table for either of the two questions? And Phil will run around with a microphone. Or a general feeling or a sense of, we'd also like feedback on how this process felt and how it felt to be engaged in the beginning of our work here together on implementing the policy.
This felt really good, but we need like 2 hours. I mean, we just get
Yes.
started and then, we kind of have to cut it off. So I would suggest maybe, yeah, part 2 and a serious, a meal and then really working at it would be helpful.
Thank you so much. And we knew we were just dabbling, but better to start dabbling than nothing. Let's see.
Oh,
Beth has got-
while I'm over there, on my way over, I just wanted to share from our table some of the things that we talked about. There were 2 things. One is having more open discussion sessions in the church, and the other one is looking for events where we can open our doors to bring more people in, and doing some more outreach.
I would say as far as process, we did have some really good discussion. One thing that came up is that people would have been interested in having the policy to look at. So that could be something to add next time. Is I actually pulled it up on my phone and read them a tiny little bit because I have it in my Google Drive. But just actually hearing more like that helped really spark our first conversation, was just reading a tiny bit of what's in there. So that would be an idea for future sessions.
Thank you. Oh, yes.
I just want to do a little method for why the policy isn't in front of you. We have to spark our imaginations. We have to ground ourselves in theology before we go to the black and white on the paper. And so that we could have made copies for all of you, but really there's some intentionality and some design in this. And so even when we do have those future sessions, there's just so much more theological grounding and imagination breaking open, because this racism thing is hard. And so we have to ground ourselves very deeply to get the courage to really do it. So that's why the policy wasn't in front of you.
Thank you, Elena. Absolutely true.
Any other imminent thoughts?
Oh, let's see. Oh, Michelle.
Just briefly on the second question, I noticed as a moderator that people were very easily identifying what was important to them, but the next step of how the focus of anti-racism would augment what you're thinking, and many didn't know what we were still doing. Several that, well, we used to do this, right? And so I thought those were really maybe important of what not so much our policy, but what are we doing right now?
Mm-hmm.
And also add what people feel what brings them joy to come to church all the time and to be engaged in our community.
Thank you. Yep. So much in not only the content of what we're thinking, but also how are we designing these next steps that we're going to take. And so on the slide here, this is our last slide. If you'd like to be part of the transition to action planning or team, let Brian or I know, or Megan, because we are still forming the team that is creating this next stage of how do we then begin to roll out our action. And I want to thank all of you for spending the time, insufficient as it was, with us to begin to think about these questions more deeply and to imagine how we move into the future. We've got a couple links on here, resources that might be of interest to you. The Presbytery of the Twin Cities has done some great work. Their Race and Equity Self-Assessment Report. And so you might want to check that out. And then the National Church, Presbyterian Church USA, has got something on their website on facing racism. So both of those are good materials for you to dig a little bit deeper into this area of work and imagination. So I'm going to just think about the future of next week with you all. And next week, the forum will take a short break as we invite you to attend the annual Fair Trade Fair, which features fair trade items from around the world, including handmade items from members of our partner congregations in Cuba, and of course, olive oil from Palestine. And the Social Justice Forum will resume on November 30th, when we welcome back members of Urban Roots an East Metro organization that engages youth in urban farming. We look forward to seeing you at both of these events. Thank you.